Hi guys, and welcome to today's task. For today's task, we are taking care of an item that I have to get done, not one that I want to do at all. I would like to put this off for years if I could, but it's something that needs immediate attention. I have a water line break from my water main from the city to my water main to my sprinkler valve. We've done all the checking we can, and we've realized that there's a break somewhere here, and I'm using as much water in 2 days as a family of 6 would use in an entire month. So clearly I'm burning through some water, and it costs money to have water here in Cache Valley. It's all culinary, at least where I live, so it's very expensive. So we've got to get this fixed right now. This valve and set of pipes is at least 6 to 7 feet deep, so we have to dig all of that up by hand, and that's brutal. That's just brutal work. I have to cover a large surface area for digging so that I've got plenty of room to work when I'm down that low, because your hole will naturally just start to taper. So we've got to cut up at least a good portion of this sod, and I want to do it nicely so that I can lay it back down and have this look like I wasn't here within at least a week or two. So the best way to do that is to use a sod cutter. This is the only piece of machinery I've rented for this job. The rest will be my back and my bare hands. Go to your nearest tool and hardware place and rent a sod cutter. I literally only used that machine for about 15 minutes worth of work, but that saved my back hours of arduous labor. And realistically, I don't even have to dig over here, but I just kind of cut that up so that I can level everything out a lot nicer. We really only have to dig from here or out like this, but you need as much surface area as you can. And to get this last little bit, I have a special tool. This square kind of spade bit, it's not like a regular square, it's a little bit sharper. It gets under the sod really well. Now that everything is up, that is going to be up, we start the long, arduous journey of digging a very, very deep hole. Oh, this is going to be brutal. I'm not even looking forward to this in the least, and I'm going to try and throw all the dirt over there, so we got to move some of this sod around a little bit. Alright, you guys, I had to call it quits last night in the dark because I was done. Quite frankly, my body was just completely spent. That's a lot of digging, and you get yourself into a spot in these holes where a regular shovel won't work for 2 reasons. 1, you don't have any room to really flex it or move it around at all. And 2, the mud was so thick that I'd put the shovel in, pull a scoop out. When I'd go to put the shovel back in, the same scoop would still be attached. So you were like beating on the shovel and whatnot. It was just too heavy and cumbersome. So I did go find me a little bitty shovel. I went and got this teeny little guy, and this is a great little tool to have, and I'll link this guy in the description as well because it gives me plenty of room to work in that hole, and it's small enough that I can knock this off really easy from all the mud that's gonna stick to it. Okay, we have reached it. We are at 6 feet deep, and this is the main water line coming in from the city. This is it continuing into the house. This is it teeing, and this is called a stop and waste. This is what feeds my sprinkler system. And when I started getting down into here a little bit more, you could really apparently see the rust on this particular piece, and I'm assuming that's where it's broke or rotted through or what. I'm not 100% certain. So I'm going to replace these pieces and everything all the way up to this neck right here. So we're gonna start taking it out. And just a little tip is when you start turning these pieces off, be very careful, because if you corkscrew this copper tubing, They don't really use copper anymore. They use a really thick kind of PEX. But if you ruin or corkscrew that copper, you're going to be in big trouble. You will have to dig further back. So the last thing I want to do is create more digging for me. So be very gentle with this. Try to not wrench on it at all. Just try to wrench only on the nuts that are here and this fitting that's coming out. Here is my pipe completely out of the ground. Cut it off up there. We're going to put all new in all the way. And there is a teeny tiny little blue hole you're seeing in there. And that is enough to just dump gallons of water outside of this pipe. So you're probably thinking, oh, Joel, what causes that? And to be honest, it's called water turbulence. And what happens is if a piece of copper or piping that you've pulled out hasn't been like reamed or cleaned properly on the inside, if there's a little bit of a burr, it'll create a turbine in the water. And over time, that will wear through pipe. I've actually seen this happen a few times in my life on different pieces of pipe. Some happen quicker than others. This is very thick brass, so it took a long time to wear through that, but sure enough, it will do it. I mean, that's at least 1/8 of an inch thick all the way around, and 60 years is just enough time to do it. All right, well, after spending $266, I have got all the parts I need to rebuild this whole setup, and I'm improving some of it as well, because the person who put this in, this is all 3/4 inch pipe, feeding it and coming out, and then they drop down to 1/2 inch for some reason, and then go back up into 1 inch. So I've always had a chatter in my sprinklers, and it's because of these bad elbows and bad kind of plumbing situation that they did there. They probably just used the parts that they had. It's just what it was. So I've replaced some of that, and we're gonna make it work a little bit better. I've also replaced these elbows with thicker and stronger elbows, so that this area that is the most vulnerable in this system doesn't go bad. Digging this up once is terrible. Digging it up because it wasn't done very well the second time is a nightmare. So I encourage you to really take your time and beef things up. If you have to fix it, improve it. This lasted 60 years. Let's see if we can get 100 out of this. So all of our fittings do require Teflon tape between all of these, and you need to make sure it's done well. And I want to show you exactly how I prefer to tape all my Teflon. Joel, it's Teflon tape, just put it on the pipe and get done. But it's not. There's a right and a wrong way. And when you put your tape on, if it's done properly, it seats better. If it's done wrong, you'll actually create possibly a leak spot. So here's the key to Teflon tape. You run it the direction that you would screw a nut on. A nut would go onto this and turn clockwise. So we need to tape our Teflon tape clockwise. Get your tape, put your thumb on there and come around at least one time. Get it tight and then keep going around. I do 4 times roughly and break it off, and that should be good. But you do want to make sure that you don't get any of these little flanges or whatever of the tape in here. That can get into a valve and it keeps them open. It's just a headache later on. So take your time to keep it clean now and do that one. Then we'll screw it on. And I just get them snug for right now, and I'll go back and tighten everything. I am going to tighten all of my fittings before I put it down in there, because once it's in the hole, I have 1, less work to move around, and 2, if it's attached to any of that copper piping, I don't want to crank on that. It's really vulnerable. So I would like to get everything as tight as possible here, so that the only time I've really got to put a wrench on that is when I'm putting the fitting that goes to the copper pipe to the copper pipe. That's a lot of copper fire pit. I do want to say that you do need to put Teflon tape on this, even though this is a PVC piece going into a metal piece. Sometimes they'll seat themselves. Maybe for your sprinkler system, it's a lateral line, it's not as big of a deal. But if it's a line that has constant water pressure in it, it needs to have Teflon tape so that this barrier doesn't get sacrificed in any way. Here is our complete old pipe, and here is all of our new pipe all put back together and ready to go. Now we just have to slip it onto the copper, and I'm going to kind of demo it up here because down there I don't have 3 hands to hold a camera and to show you how to do it. In order for this to fit, you have to have that much of a gap between your 2 pieces of copper. So you slide it all the way in on one and slide it back on the other one so it's straddling the 2, and then with these already on, these little bushings, you will compress them and seal them. It'll compress against itself and seal around the pipe. So if you tighten this more and more and more, this rubber bushing will actually just start to tighten and crimp around that copper pipe and seals it from water leaking out. All right, you guys, that is our part. all the way put back together. So we've clamped and squoze all of our rings. I think they should be good. We're ready to turn the water back on. I am very nervous about turning the water back on, but this will be a good test. All right, a ton of air has gotten into our line down there. So I have opened up a faucet on the inside of the house and we are ready to open up this water. And I want to kind of do it slow, just to be cautious. Get it going. You can hear it. Oh, got to turn that stopper waste off, Joel. Let's try this again. It looks like it's holding. We'll go shut our faucet off inside. You guys, that is fully repaired as far as down there goes. So now we just need to rebuild everything coming up. Our next step is completed. We have put our elbow here and our 1 inch here. So we're actually coming out of that 1 inch now all the way up into our sprinkler main, which is super nice. I've double clamped it and I even clamped it one on each side. And maybe it doesn't matter, but I think it's a really good idea is you clamp one to this side, it's gonna pull harder maybe on this side, so it pinches it, and then you clamp one on this side so it pulls harder on that side, so it kind of gets a double direction. I would assume that these would clamp kind of uniformly, if that's the right word, but in case they don't, doing them opposite is good. And I did double just because this is a high pressure line and it's going to stay pressurized for the rest of the summer, and I want to just maintain that strength and integrity, so that's what we did. Oh man, we have reached the point of no return. The sprinkler lines are all repaired at the bottom. I'm going to wait to do these top ones because I don't want to be throwing dirt on them and past them. And I really just want to make sure everything's out of the way before I start repairing these upper lines and get everything kind of shored up down below. Now, the thing that stinks about this is the amount of dirt I took out of there will not fit back in there because that took years and decades of compaction, and we've just put a lot of air in the soil. So try to pack it down the best you can as you go. Every few feet, jump down there and start stomping it down a little bit, and then do a little more and stomp it down a little bit and do a little more and stomp it down a bit. You could go rent a compactor and do some of that and it would help, but I don't like running that kind of machinery on top of the pipes that I just fixed, just in case something for some reason gets compacted too tight, too hard, and I don't know, don't want to undo what I just did. So we're going to take it nice and easy and start putting all this dirt back. As you guys can tell, this grass is back to normal and we are just watering it rigorously to get it to kind of re-grab to the dirt that we took it up from. And that'll take about 6 to 8 weeks. But in the meantime, we're just gonna kind of block it off and make sure nobody's really walking on it so that it doesn't sink. I have seen a little bit of settling going on in here, and that's kind of normal as expected. If I see a great deal of settling, I will pull the sod back up and throw a little bit more down and level it again just to keep working it at least where it's sinking dramatically. That's kind of expected. That's one of the reasons why I dreaded doing this, was the digging and then the repair and sinking afterwards. There's not much you can do about that and there's no way to get around it, but I'm happy that it is fixed and I'm happy that we're running a lot better and not spending extra money on water that I don't need to. You guys, if you're new to the channel, subscribe. If you like today's video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in a Today's Task hat, email mytodaystask@gmail.com and I'll give you all the purchasing details. Until then, we'll see you guys next time. Dang it! Bud, that does suck. Oh, you're great. You're just fine. That was like 10 minutes of footage and we didn't record any of it. Ow! Oh, that hurt. And quite frankly, my butt. And quite... Do not jump across it, Boston. Copper fire pit. Copper fire pit.